as though that they need an opportunity to achieve the aspiration and the goals that they are capable of doing. Talk a little bit about the small voice and a little bit about what this is all about.
Well, the small voice is a project that's really dear to my heart because it affected me so much growing up, and I believe that it affects everyone. Every single one of us have that inner voice that talks to us. It either warns you not to do something or not to say something or not to go a certain way when you're traveling, or whatever the small voice is there to guide you through, it's there. We all have it. But my particular thing with the small voice is that I don't recall as a child anyone ever telling me how significant the small voice was or to pay attention to it. And there's been times in my life that I honestly believe, had I known the significance of the small voice, I would not have made choices or decisions I made that actually affected my life dramatically. So what I wanted to do was allow young people the chance to develop their inner voice or their small voice and hear it. Because from the small voice, I believe, comes inner peace.
You know, one thing, I was telling somebody the other day about the story that you told my wife and I, and it was with your son.
Yes.
How you told your son that it was a Halloween, how him and his friends were able to go out. And she said, but I want you back here by 9 o'clock, 9:30. So they left the house around 6 o'clock. 6:30, he was back at the house. And you looked at him kind of strange, like most parents would. You know, a kid has an opportunity to go out with his friends, Halloween, have a good time, blah, 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 get candy, this, that, and the other. And he's back at 6:30, leaving the house at 6. And you said to him, why are you back here? And he says, the little voice told me not to go.
That small voice.
You know, and you said, well, what happened? She said, well, the guys that were going out, they wanted to buy eggs and throw them at the people marching in the band, and that's not something I wanted to do. And that was an opportunity. Had you not told him about the small voice, guess what? He would have been throwing the eggs. You know what I mean? Because that was the cool thing to do with his friends.
Exactly.
How would you go about presenting this to young groups or young boys and girls, helping them to overcome these things? Because, you know, the small voice, as we know it, is in contradiction with what our friends want to do. It's not a popular thing to listen to the small voice.
No. And it takes an enormous amount of self-love, okay, self-awareness, and self-control to know the difference between right or wrong and being willing to exercise that small voice and what it's trying to guide you to do or not to do. And I think that the way to introduce it to young people is to listen. Because whether they know it or not, I believe that they have small voice stories, which if you go to, it's called share at thesmallvoice.com. I'm going to say it again, share at thesmallvoice.com, and share your small voice stories with me. Because lots of people, all ages, all different statuses in life, all different kinds of schools, whatever the case may be, each one of us have a small voice story. Because it's the spirit within you guiding you, telling you, you know, Bob, don't go that way. Or Bob, you know, control yourself. Don't get angry. Don't say something you'll regret. And we have to be in tune to that. And I think that if young people are taught at a young age to be aware of it, it might help a lot of issues that are going on now. Because gangs have to do with children who feel they don't belong. And drug use and self-esteem issues and self-love, I believe, is at the root of all these problems with our young people. And we're not developing this. We're teaching them education. And in a lot of ways in our country, that is so lacking. It's just not enough. I mean, intellectually, children, okay, some get it, some don't. Emotionally, our children are hungry. They're starved. Spiritually, some of them don't have a clue. And it's not so much, it's not, you don't just talk about the Father. You don't just talk about the Lord. You have to teach children how to connect, because connecting to Source is so important. And if you don't get children to do that and do it at a young age, the younger the better.
You know, one thing, amazing thing we're talking about, I was talking to a couple of gentlemen the other day when I was doing the show, and we were talking about what it is about. What is education about? Education isn't about Bob Tankard being the principal, the coach, or whatever it is. It's not about the teacher. It's about what I have learned in my life through education that I can impute on that child to make them successful. Because it's a cycle. It's a cyclical cycle. everything. They're the next generation that's going to rule over me and make decisions for me as I age.
Yes.
And then the next generation they're talking to is going to go. So if we do not give them the tools, I believe, in order to make the good decision, like we were talking about our camp, the camp that we're even working on trying to come about, is leadership, developing good leadership skills. But in order to develop those good leadership skills, you have to have positive self-esteem. That means think something of yourself. Develop good decision-making policies and practices. You know what I mean? And develop confidence and feel good about who you are.
Yes.
You know, if you don't feel good, you know, you got kids going to school today, especially a lot of in cities, but also in rural America, that don't feel good about themselves. They don't, you know, their home lives are not what it should be. And consequently, they're just looking to survive. So the academics in school or some of the other stuff is second nature. It's immaterial to them. It's not really important. You know, how do we begin to transform that attitude into a more positive one?
Well, I feel that a lot of our young people today put so much emphasis on outside. Anything outside of who they are, whether it's somebody's label, design it is, the most expensive it is, that's your value, that's your worth. And it isn't. And I think the only way to teach children that is to teach it by example. I don't wear things that have labels on them. And I taught my children that. It's okay to buy something because it's quality and you spend more for it. But you don't pay more for something because someone's name is on it because you think that that's going to make you more valuable or more worthy. It's not about that. The pride in oneself, in one's appearance, in one's ability, that comes from nurturing. And we have to nurture our children and teach our children to believe in who you are, regardless of what that guy or that girl thinks about you or feels about you. You got to believe in you.
Let's go back into saying the nurturing, because I think that's the key. That's a big key that's missing in our families today. Our families a lot of our families are in disarray. You know,
we're in trouble. We're in crisis.
We're in an alarming crisis too. And I think that because the kids are still coming home to nobody there, still looking at the television, and our televisions are showing kids a lot of things that they don't even need to see or what.
Entirely too much.
Right. Because there's no direction with it. There's no guidance with it. There's no, there's no little voice telling them, no, this, that, and the other. How do we, as a community of people, as an organization, how do we begin to teach our children about listening to the voice, to hearing the voice? You know, when did they begin to hear this voice? How do they hear it?
I think it has a lot to do with quiet. Because the average home you go into now, from the minute people get up in the morning, that TV comes on. I have nothing against TV. I think it serves a purpose. But it has to be used in such a way where it's informative and educational. And I think it has to do with children. And there's nothing wrong with sitting quiet. Sit quiet. Just sit quiet and listen. Because with everything going on around you and all this chatter in your brain, you don't have time to be still and listen. And then when there's a circumstance or something is going on, just sit quiet and ask yourself, okay, this is the situation. How am I going to handle it? And then just sit back and let it come to you. What am I going to do? It will come. If you take the time to sit quiet and listen. Some people do the pros and cons list. I know you heard that before. Like, okay, this is what I got to do. Well, this is the pros and this is the cons. That's fine if that works for you. But then after you've done that, you still got to sit quiet and just let it come to you. Little people, the only time, now think about this, the only time little people sit quiet is when they're punished.
Or when they're sleeping.
Or when they're sleeping. The only time you tell a child to go sit down and be quiet is when they've done something to upset you, or it's time to go to bed. Or you could even, if you're a mom or dad in your home and you want to start this process with your children, you either do it first thing in the morning, which mornings are hectic if you've got kids going to school. I know, I've been there. But in the evening before bed, when you say your prayers, if you're into prayers, or if not, just tell them, go sit a minute. Just go sit quiet on your bed, or go sit in a chair in your room.
You know, when our kids were growing up, and this happened when I was growing up, my mother had 10 kids, so trying to find a table to fit 10 kids and 2 parents was quite a task. Quite intense. But I remember when my wife Dawn and I were raising our kids, everybody sat at the table. We had dinner every night together.
Me too.
And the questions would come out, what did you do today? You having this, that, and the other. Today, those conversations are not happening because that particular practice is not happening.
No.
You know, everybody's either sending out, getting meals in, the kids are eating over here, dad's eating here, mom's eating in the kitchen.
Cell
you know
phone.
what I mean? Or cell phone is going, you know what I mean? So it's the communication that would help people understand or hear the voice is being blocked out by so many other variables that are in there.
Yeah, all of these wonderful gadgets, I call them, that everybody has. The thing that hurts me the most is I could be anywhere in Brooklyn and I'm walking in the street and I'll see a woman walking down the street with 2 children or 1 child. And she's holding this child's hand, but she's not interacting with him or her. She's on the phone. And she doesn't realize that little guy may be 2, 3, 4, 7. She's never going to get that moment back in time with that child. Never.
But you know what the problem is? Kids in the 3rd and 4th grade have their own cell phones now.
And that to me is
and I'm saying to myself, who could they possibly be talking to? We did without cell phones for hundreds of years before they came.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying they're not useful, in emergencies and stuff like that. My wife says, I got my cell phone here and I got my computer, but, I don't, my television, I watch the ball game or the History Channel or the Biography Channel or something educational, the Animal Channel, something like that. Maybe once in a while I'll watch a movie. If it's an old cowboy movie, I like to watch old cowboys. My cell phone, call me. My kids text me. I tell them, don't text. I'm not texting you back. I said, call me, tell me what you want, and then that's the deal. All right? My computer, I go on my computer, do my consultant business or my other business, or if I'm looking up something. I do not spend, forget hours on a computer, after because I don't need to be on there that long. I'd rather talk conversation, because I think that's important. And I think that what we're working on as we're looking at the voice, as we're looking at the leadership camp and everything else, is to teach individuals how to develop those communication skills that they can communicate with anybody, whether you are down here in the socio-economic ladder or you're up in the sky, and that you're able to communicate.
Because it's affecting all of us.
That's right, that's right.
And any moms or dads out there watching, all I'm going to ask you to do is when you're with your children, listen. Put the cell phone down, turn the TV off, and listen. Just talk to your kids.
What do you want to do? Tell us a little bit about how you want to start the program in the voice, the small voice.
The Small Voice program, the idea that I had was to reach out to young people and hear their stories. Just listen to their small voice stories. Once we've done that, to set up workshops locally and in different communities, and then take the children from those workshops who really get into it and want to talk, and have a program at the camp. Now, the program at the camp would start off with the staff, the actual program itself, the sleeping arrangements, that sort of thing. Then these